It's officially start time, so
Awesome. Well, I
feel
guess
free to
this
introduce
was
us.
this was supposed to be a conversation between me and Steve Davidson. I guess we're going to do it solo today, so I will be counting on audience participation. My name is Brianna Wu. I'm a software engineer. I was also running for United States Congress this year before coronavirus hit and pretty much ruined everything. We'd raised almost $500,000 for my congressional campaign, and we're building up all this infrastructure, and it's very hard to win an election when you can't hold events and you can't canvass and you can't knock on doors. So we decided to withdraw at that point. So I guess, there are a lot of discussions we're having right now about the intersection politics and our lives. So I guess maybe that's the discussion we should have. Frank, I see you're here in the audience with us. Do you want to introduce everybody and then we can go around the room?
Oh,
Hi.
Introduce everybody or introduce myself?
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Frank Wu. I'm the consort of Brianna Wu, and artist, writer, scientist, patent person, formerly political agent, I guess.
Agent. I don't think you're a political agent.
Okay. So anyway, so that's me.
Awesome. So Frank, I guess I'll kind of use you as my co-panelist here today. You ran for office alongside me. For anyone out there that's interested in running for office themselves, I certainly want to share my own experience, but how did you find it? Because I think it's fun and most people don't know that it's fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun to it, and being involved and seeing other people that really cared about stuff that mattered.
Yep.
And changing the world. I mean, we marched with people that were on strike.
That's true.
All around the district, Stop and
Yep.
Shop, at hotels, at there were so many strikes in the last couple of years. I can't even remember them all. With the National Grid workers, and it's like every time we did that, I felt like we were making a change.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest awesome thing about running for office is I think this is true for any profession, no matter what you do. It's certainly true for engineering, but for myself as a software dev, you kind of get focused in your own little world, right? And you're very focused on the in and outs of what's happening there. For me, the real advantage of running for office is I got to get outside that bubble and go see what the hotel workers were trying to deal with when they were trying to negotiate for fair pay. You would get to talk to the person at the grocery store that chopped up your meat that was trying to get health care. You would get to talk to Frank and I. Frank, were you there for that meeting? We had a meeting with the Union of Elevator Union.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, and their concerns.
Yeah, and finding out what they're trying to get. So I found it, there's always this this stereotype that running for office makes you a terrible person. I found it to be very much the opposite, that it forced me to get out there and really not just focus on my own party and my own belief systems and scream them from the rooftops, but quite the opposite, to get to know everyone and bring a wider range of views there. Did you find that at all, Frank?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was all sorts of people that I would not normally interact with, and then finding out what I mean, people in Bridgewater that were worried about like the amount of sewage.
Yep.
And what do you do with all the sewage? And do we have enough water incoming to all the houses? It's like, that's not something I would have thought of in a million years. And yet that is a clear and present problem.
About the way the disability benefits are appropriated, I had no idea. You had to go to a specific court, fill out forms, have a hearing in front of a judge, get certain medical experts there. It's just not something I'd ever thought about, and that system is frayed to its core. So I do want to talk about one of the harder parts of running for office, which I found that I was ironically really good at, which is raising money. And this is just me speaking really honestly here. If you're looking at running for office, the reality is about 2/3 of your time is going to be spent fundraising. You can ask Frank. I wake up every single day. I would come sit in this chair, which is why I have this very nice mic set up. And we would do what you call call time. You would cold call strangers. You would go down the list and start working to meet different people for a political organization. She would resolicit donors. You would try to get large endorsements for groups that would give you money. I mean, Frank, how much time do you think I put into that?
Yeah, you think that like all the stuff that we're doing to change the world, you think that that would be your main time thing, but no, huge, unbelievable amounts of time were spent raising money, and also thank you for the people on this
Yes,
who supported us, who
I
donated.
see some people on this call that supported us. We really appreciate you.
So thank you. And it also really opened up my eyes to like why politicians, I mean, corporations come up to a politician and say like, please support this thing and we will give you, $5,000, $10,000.
Yeah, right.
You can't be bought for $5,000 or $10,000. And after spending days and days and days trying to raise money, I understand why people would take that.
I do too. We didn't accept a dime of corporate cash the whole time, but I tell you, it's you spend so much time chasing those max donations. It is just exhausting. Yeah, I do have to say, maybe it's my personality because I'm an engineer, but I've gotten to know a lot of people that are running for office for the first time and their approach to that. And a lot of the time they come into it very idealistically and they're like, oh, we don't need money. We're just going to raise awareness on Facebook and Twitter and we're going to get the word out that way. And we're not going to waste our time fundraising. We're going to talk to the people. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work because you have to have a staff. Volunteers are great. Any congressional campaign is going to live and die based on your volunteers. We love our volunteers, but you need, you need a campaign manager. You need a field director. You've got to pay for NGP database. You've got to pay for FEC oversight, someone to go through and do accounting for this to make sure you're in compliance with FEC stuff. The reality is, running a campaign is an expensive endeavor. And I think a lot of particularly younger people there correctly looking at this moment in history and being very frustrated about the situation. I think they're naive about how, there's, I think this is something I had to learn as I got older. I think we all tend to think that the generation that came before us doesn't have much to teach us. And, you kind of arrogantly think, well, I'm just going to find a new way to do this. Well, actually, they've kind of got a point when it comes to needing money to get out there and run a congressional campaign. So that was, Frank, do you agree with that? Do you have any?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just the nuts and bolts stuff of you need to advertise. You need to make palm cards. And palm cards cost 50 cents to $1.25 each.
43 cents.
What?
We pay 43 cents for ours, everyone.
43 cents. Okay, 43 cents. But still, that money's got to come from somewhere. Got to have bumper stickers. You've got to have buttons because people love buttons.
Yep.
And they're expensive. Bumper stickers are expensive. And yeah.
So I want to talk about the tribalism. I want to really get real with all of you and tell you what it's like running for office. One of the things I found that was constantly surprised me was it really feels like herding cats running for office. I personally, I'm a Democrat, and Democrats are a big tent, and you have a lot of loose coalitions there, right? You've got LGBT coalition, you've got, workers, you've got engineers, you've got people advocating for privacy rights, you've got disability advocates. And I want to be clear, all these people are dead on. They've got great points. It's your job to represent every single damn one of them. If you're not interested in that, don't run for office. But what I really found is it's very balkanized, where every single one of these groups is speaking its own language. And, you know, it's what you're working on. So you feel like that's the center of your political universe. And there's very little give and take with other areas of the community, which it constantly makes you feel like you're trying to coalition build, and a rule I always had was only have positive interactions with people. So I would constantly be trying to bring people in, but it was very, very balkanized. It felt like, I think that if, in my opinion, if the Democrats wanted to win more, I think that we should work together as more of a coalition, because I think that's one of the structural weaknesses of our party. Frank, would you agree with that?
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
I completely agree on both of those issues, the balkanization and the coalition building. I mean, RFK did really well before he was assassinated in 1968, and was well on his way to getting the nomination for president from the Democrats, because he had built this coalition of you know, the people, the agricultural workers and people on the left, different groups, and he had built this coalition. But about the balkanization, what I found really surprising was just how parochial people are. I mean,
Yeah.
we met people.
And they were already starting.
Okay.
Okay. No. So, for example, okay, we bought a house in Dedham.
Yep.
And we did a lot of door knocking in Dedham, and we introduced ourselves like, "Hi, this is Brianna. She's running for office here in Dedham." And they're like, "You live in Dedham? You're running for office? You got my vote."
Yep.
And I was like, "Well, don't you want to hear about like our positions to see if they're politically aligned with yours?" Like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, you're good people. You live here in Dedham. I'm like, okay, well, thank you for your support, but I kind of, I mean, wow. And I'd go into other areas, and they'd be like, well, you're in our district, but you're not really from here. You're not from this town, or you haven't lived in this part of Massachusetts for 25 years or 50 years like my family has, so you're an outsider. It's like, wow. Okay. Even though like we could tell you about all these great ideas about making your life better, but you don't want to hear it because, okay, fine. Yeah. And it was just weird.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. So Frank, you are unique because you are one of the very few male political spouses that I know. So what did you find that to be like, kind of being you were the Jackie O in our political run. How did you find that?
I'm plenty happy to like stand in the corner and wave and say Brianna's awesome, because well, you know, Brianna's awesome. And having a candidate that I'm married to that I think is brilliant and smart and insightful and has all the right positions on all the right issues, well, that made it really easy. Because if you were like a Donald Trump supporter and you're running for office, I think I'd have a hard time.
Yeah, but I'm talking more deeply. I mean, how many times would you come home from work and I would have spent, 8, 9, 10 hours fundraising, which is just cold calling strangers.
Yeah.
And you would try to talk to me and I would just be so exhausted with talking, I wouldn't have much left. I wouldn't have much like conversational gas left in my tank. I mean, what did you find the sacrifice to be like?
Well, I mean, there was that. There was that. And then there were the days that we both put in, like I'd been in like doing patent law all day. And I come home.
At your chin.
Oh, is that Steve?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think someone who doesn't have their mic muted. Go ahead.
You've been in the office raising money all day, and then we have events. Okay, and I'm home right now. It's 6:15. We need to get over to Braintree by 7 o'clock because you have a talk, and then right after that we need to go over to East Bridgewater at 8 o'clock, and then to this other thing at 9. And okay, let's get in the car and go.
Yep. Yeah, there would be days that your face would hurt. My face would hurt from smiling because you'd wake up on a Saturday and you'd just want to take a nap, and you would find yourself, okay, got to go to Braintree, got to go to Weymouth, got to go to South Boston, got to go to another piece of South Boston, got to go over to Hull, got to go, and you're just got to go to Stoughton, got to go to Dedham. And
yeah, okay. There's people protesting the compressor plant in East Weymouth. You got to go that. And there's people on strike in Boston. We have to fight our way through Boston traffic. And then after that, we need to go to the rally in Boston Common. And then after that, there's a political meeting that we need to attend.
And that's every day of your life for years. Oh my gosh. So
yeah.
Well,
it's kind of exhilarating, kind of fun, and kind of exhausting.
Definitely. Well, I would love to take some questions from the audience. Are there any questions out there about issues you may care about, or maybe you want to run for office yourself? You have thoughts? Please, anyone jump on in.
Brown, there's a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh gosh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Is there running a congressional campaign for dummies book or website you can recommend? I would say I have not seen that. I took the Emerge training, which is a group that hires Democratic women. I would very strongly not recommend getting associated with that group. So
Why?
I don't.
Okay, you don't have to go into it if you want.
So there's not a specific book I can recommend. I would say one of the very first thing, one of the biggest mistakes I made the very first time I ran for public office is I didn't bring in political veterans. So I would say just as important as any book you might read, I would say bring in someone, a campaign manager that has done the work before. Because the job of raising money, of putting together events, of recruiting volunteers, it's pretty standard stuff. It's not rocket science. You've just got to do it that way. Frank, what would your suggestion be on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen a book or a website that really talks about the nuts and bolts of campaigning in any coherent, complete way.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just posted into the chat, based on the question, I just Googled it, and on Amazon there is Running for Local Office for Dummies.
Well, there it is. There it is. Awesome. Good to know. Hey,
yeah.
So we have a question here from Joanne Rickson. I think this is a really good one. All of you feel free to write any questions you might have in chat. How did your experience in fandom communities benefit you when running for office? This is a great question, and it's wider than fandom. One of the reasons I was very effective at raising money was zeroing in on communities of which I'd played a part ahead of time. Frank didn't do as much fundraising as I did, but he did do some. And Frank, wouldn't you say a lot of your fundraising was from connections you'd built up in the science fiction community?
Yeah. So, and a lot of it was like, hey, you know me, you know our politics, you know what we stand for, we're trying to do. Would you be willing to kick in a few bucks?
Absolutely. And you talk to people in sci-fi fandom, they're not just helpful on raising money for policy questions. It was amazingly helpful. We had some very specific questions about the militarization of space. And I actually found myself having a meeting with a NASA engineer I know from fandom, who was very nice and sat down and answered my questions for literally hours about satellite placement. I ran on a very tech-heavy platform. And as such, there are many areas of tech policy I know about, but I can't know everything. So we're not only was a great group to fundraise from, it was a great group to talk to about policy with. In addition, a lot of the bigger science fiction people were very, very, very friendly and helpful in promoting my campaign and putting out messages. James S.
Oh, yeah.
Corey did, Chuck Wendig, Will Wheaton, Claudia Black from Stargate Atlantis has long been one of my biggest supporters. She's amazing. So it was working with that community. And this goes beyond science fiction. Because for me, my background as a game developer and a software engineer, I would say probably 9/10 of my money that we raised came from tech and science fiction, which surprised me because nationally I'm best known as a feminist figure. So I thought it was a very, very strong group to work with, and I would recommend it as a background to anyone who's running for office. Frank, would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And in addition, just going to science fiction conventions and meeting people and just having random conversations is really good practice when you're if you're going into politics and going to meet random people and have random conversations. But also, like Brianna and I have done a million conventions where we've been on panels, and being able to coherently get a message across in as few sentences as possible in an entertaining way is good practice for political speeches.
Definitely. There's a personality on the left that tends to be very professorial, and there are a lot of people I think that feel just because they have a correct academic view on a policy that that's all that matters. And I really understand that. As an engineer, that's where I'm most comfortable living as well. But one of the things I really discovered is you've got to talk to people, and it's more about their heart. It's more about their emotions. That's what matters. And you've got to have the skill to talk to them and make that human connection very quickly. That's really one of the biggest benefits of having run for office. I tell you, after having done this, I could walk into a party and meet every single person in that room very easily. There's no one I could not talk to at this point, because you're just constantly having to listen to people more than you talk and understand what makes them, what they care about.
Yeah, we really are looking for questions from you all. I mean, one of the things that we really tried to do when Brianna was running for office is ask what you guys are interested in.
Yep.
What policies, what problems, what things matter to you.
Absolutely. So while people are thinking about questions, Frank, I wanted to say, yeah, we're living through a really unique moment right now in American history. We're seeing riots throughout the United States right now, reckoning with this long history of racial injustice. So just talking about politics a little bit, Frank, you're a person of color. I wanted to ask how you might feel about everything that is happening right now.
I mean, I'm simultaneously angry, terrified, hopeful, and kind of excited.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure I have any great insights into any of this, but it is really great knowing that all these injustices have been going on for so long. And we're finally at a point where technologically we can video anything that's happening by just taking out our phones. That's been a huge sea change, and that will drive the political change because it drives the awareness that, like, people aren't just making up these stories of, well, some cop beat me up and it wasn't right, and people are yeah. But you see the videos, and oh my God, it changes people's minds because you can actually see this happening.
Yeah. And I thought there was a Twitter post I saw and I really liked. It said, 2 weeks of protests have done more than the last 100 years of centrist policies have achieved. And I saw that and I thought that was actually a very fair point. Yeah, one of the things I saw running for office, I want to tell you all a story. If I ever write a book about this, this is how it's going to open up. It's going to start at a dinner Frank and I were at. It was a political dinner, and people are sitting there, and it was a dinner where a woman who had just run and won was the keynote speaker. And before we got to any of her remarks, we're at this dinner, and one man gets up and goes, well, first I want to go out there and I want to thank my friends that made all this possible today. So he stands up and he thanks 20 men, and then they bring someone else up. And they stand up and they thank another 20 male public officials, and they give speeches and they give speeches. And 5 minutes turns into 20, it turns into 40, it turns into 50. And literally at the end of it, this dinner that was supposed to be honoring a woman that had just won, literally, I'm not exaggerating, turned into 50 minutes of male, white Democratic officials patting each other on the back for being there. And then the woman that was there to give the keynote got up and had 30 seconds to speak before the event was over. That dynamic doesn't just exist with women in the Democratic Party. It's also people of color. For the district I ran in, it was very, very high percentages of Black people living there. Brockton particularly is very high in people of color. Yet when you would go to those Democratic town meetings, Frank, what race were all of the people there?
98% white.
Right. So there's very much a distance between what I think we say we believe and what the exact outcome is. So I think we have a lot of work to do there. There's a question in the chat from CJ, and the question is, what is your opinion on universal basic income? I am strongly for this. I come from the tech industry. I consider myself pretty close to Andrew Yang. I think it's a policy that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I really enjoyed and appreciated about Andrew Yang's approach to this is he wanted to create a new series of taxes in order to fund this. There would basically be charging a tax on Amazon and Facebook for large aggregated data use, which I think makes a lot of sense. So it's not just the universal basic income that's a good idea. The way he was going to tax it was actually going to lead to more cybersecurity nationwide. If the cost of keeping a large database of people's personal information is something you get taxed on, there's a lot more accountability there for how you use it. So I think it's a great idea. Frank, did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big problems is population is increasing. Robots taking people's jobs is also increasing. Are we in the future going to have enough meaningful, productive work as opposed to busy work for people to have jobs?
Yeah.
And the answer is, I'm not interested. I don't think so. And
I do
if
want to
that,
say my friend Christopher Mims at the Wall Street Journal wrote a really thoughtful piece on this, and he was talking about how this belief that robots are coming and taking away all of our jobs, there's not exactly data here to show it yet. Now, it is true that we've lost jobs and they've migrated to different parts. So as far as this mass exodus of jobs, we have not seen that yet. But like you, I share a fear that that's coming.
yeah, I mean, there's a big percentage of people in the United States whose jobs involve driving stuff around. And if all the cars become robot cars and we don't need truck drivers or delivery people or whatever, a lot of people are going to be out of work.
Yeah.
And what happens to them?
All right. So I see a question in the chat from Grace. I was just about to get to you. Thanks for typing out your question. You wanted to ask, how does science begin to regain its importance in our United States dialogue? That is such a critical question. I think you start, respectfully, I think one way to start is to elect STEM candidates to office in the first place. I'm a software engineer, and we raised a lot of money from other people that wanted to see someone with a science and tech background in office. I think that's one part of the formula there. I think there's a bigger problem with tribalism in the United States, where people have made up their mind about something and are really often not interested in listening to any more data on that subject. So I think that's a cultural barrier. And thirdly, I think the biggest barrier is our news media. When it comes to talking about science-based policy, the science is very rarely the topic of conversation in news articles. The argument over the science is the subject in that we see in our media. So I think it's those three components. First, you've got to get the media to develop better connections with science and report those stories better. I think we've got to elect more scientists. And three, I think we need to all be willing to hear like points of view with science that may upset us. So Frank, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the media projecting this false narrative that there are two sides to every story. Yeah. It's like the scientists are telling you the truth. The shit either works or it doesn't work. And they're saying, okay, this is a thing that we tried this vaccine. It just doesn't work. That is the reality. And then, oh, no, you got to have the other side, which is a bunch of hooey, and yet that needs to be represented. Actually, no, it doesn't. So there's that. But also having people in charge, electing someone like Joe Biden who actually respects scientists and respects science as reality, that will help tremendously.
Yeah, I also think, this has not been reported enough, I believe. Did you know that they tried to get a coronavirus vaccine? They tried to start development of this. I believe it was 6 years ago. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal about this I thought was excellent. And they came out with the vaccine, and they were shopping around and trying to get basically government money to start funding for this, knowing that a coronavirus was going to strike eventually. And they couldn't get NHS money for it, and they couldn't get private venture money for it because they thought it was just an absolute disaster. So when you think about all of the economic devastation that we're undergoing right now, I want to tell you, we could be avoiding all of this if, 6 years ago, we had made a relatively modest investment of $250 million. So I think it's really, yeah, go ahead, Frank.
No, I mean, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is, okay, I was on a panel the other day about dinosaurs and what happened when the asteroid hit and all the devastation. And what we really need is we need a better system to look for large asteroids that could hit the Earth and essentially annihilate the human race. And we need that now because an asteroid could be coming like next week and we wouldn't know because it could be coming in a direction we're not looking at. And the question then becomes, is there the political will to spend $500 million looking for asteroids?
Yeah. And
the thing is, if I'm an elected official and I'm up for re-election in 4 years because I'm a senator, and I start talking about asteroids, and if there is no asteroid in the next 4 years, my opponent's going to be like, oh, Mr. Asteroid is like, oh, it wants to spend our money on doing that. And then the project is killed. Yeah. And people just are not good at planning ahead.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Grace had a comment here, so I just want to read this and then go to Jay. Grace was saying that Neil deGrasse Tyson suggested we put the faces of scientists on money and honored American scientists more publicly. I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea. We certainly honor political figures, we honor generals, we honor sports figures. I don't know why we don't honor scientists. I think that is an excellent idea. And I would love to see some more women scientists while we were at it. That would be great. So Jay had a great question here. Since a small wireless assassination robot can be built for a few $100s and off-the-shelf parts, has personal security changed for candidates or elected reps? I want to just answer this question honestly. There is a shocking amount of loss of privacy that you undergo when you run for office. Many of you knew me during Gamergate, which was, there's not a good way to have a Law and Order episode made about your life. That happened to me and all the death threats that I got about that. And after all of that happened, Frank and I had to put out a tremendous amount of personal information about our address, our financial information, all of this out into the voting sphere. So I want to be really clear with you, Jay. When a congressperson is out there doing their job, you are there with a body person, maybe two body people, and just the public. There is zero security there. If it's a large event, maybe you'll have security that you're hiring there as part of it. But generally speaking, no. Also, it's very, very easy to have your personal information stolen. Frank and I had a brick thrown through our window when we announced that we were running for office. So I would love to tell you that security was there, but it is not.
You're unbelievably exposed.
Unbelievably exposed.
Every year, as a legal requirement for running for congressional office, you need to file a financial disclosure statement,
Yep.
which lists all of your assets and all of your debts. And that's just out there as a public document.
Yeah.
And you don't have any choice. You have to do it.
Right. Which could be used to steal your identity in a million different ways. Like we're looking on, I was looking on 4chan. They found my social security number. They're just publishing my social security number, birth date, all this kinds of stuff. Thank God we never saw any credit card fraud while we were running for office. But, it's all out there. And that's scary stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So Grace had a question. So what happened in regards to Trump? I'm going to assume you're talking in the wider United States. I have my own theory, and Frank, I'd love you to give yours.
Wait, in regard to why did he get elected?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to take the question to mean. Why did Trump get elected? I think that especially following the Great Recession of 2008, I think that we left a lot of people behind in ways that we don't talk about. Frank and I certainly met a lot of plumbers, a lot of electricians, a lot of people that work on roads that just never came back from 2008 economically the way that they needed to. One of the issues we heard about constantly was just the affordability of everything falling apart. Everything from the dream of sending your child to college to owning a house. It just seemed more and more unattainable to people. So what I personally believe is I do think that Trump played into this original wound in the country of, white supremacy. I think he played to that base. And I think at the same time, he tapped into a very raw political anger that I think is very correct. I think people in this country have lost faith that Washington is interested in them and working for them. And I think that in that desperation, they made a choice that unfortunately exacerbated all of these problems. So that's my belief in how we got here. Frank, how do you feel about that?
I think it was about half a dozen to a dozen different factors. I think that what you talked about are the two of the big factors. I think another point was Democratic complacency.
Yep.
Well, I think a lot of Democrats were like, well, we elected Obama and that was okay. We elected him again. That was okay. We're just going to Democrat presidents from now on in. Hillary's ahead 5 to 6 points in the polls. I don't need to show up because other people will vote.
Yeah.
And then those other people can vote.
One
I
thing
think,
Frank and I saw repeatedly running for office is there's a very big generational divide. I want to be very clear. I count myself as much more aligned with the millennial faction that is very frustrated about the state of things in America. That's very much where my heart is. But I think one of the reasons that, generally speaking, baby boomers and that generation have been more successful in bringing the policies they very generally advocate to bear is that they show up. There's a very big sense that I ran into repeatedly with people my age and younger that tweeting was how you made your voice heard, that Facebooking was how you made your voice heard, that putting out YouTube videos was how you made your voice heard. And when I compare that kind of civic activism to what I see with people my parents' age, it's going and running the local polling place. It's going and donating money. It's being more involved civically. It's being an elected officer in your local Democratic Party. And I think that I think we're seeing a real generational divide in this moment. And I think if you really want to change in politics, something that I think is paramount is for people unhappy with the current state of things to get involved, to engage with this flawed system, and to work with people that may even share different views than they have and work to make it reflect your own views. I think until people my age and younger have a mass awakening that we've got to get off the computer and more engaged in our civic duty, I unfortunately think we're going to see the status quo continue. Frank, what do you think about that?
yeah, no, I completely agree with that. If you think that you're changing the world by tweeting and Facebooking, you are maybe 20% right. But it's not. If you want to make real change, there's other things that you have to do. One of the big things, one of the other big reasons that I think Hillary lost that we don't talk about enough is Republican voter suppression. They closed a lot of the polls in the black areas of Wisconsin and did not close the polls in the rural white areas. And if you were black in Wisconsin, you had to stand in line for 3 hours. If you're white, you just walk in, you vote, you go home. That's bullshit. And yet the Republicans are doing that same sort of thing. You saw it in Georgia. You're going to see it all over the place in November. And the Democrats need to run for local offices because when the Republicans control the governorships and they control the Secretary of State of these governors of these states, where they can control who votes, who gets thrown off the voting rolls, how many voting booths are open in different areas. They swing those things so that they get an extra point or two in the polls, and in some places that's enough to win. It's enough to win.
So Jay has a remark here in the chat I thought was pretty good. He's talking about how there's a feeling among many people that the tribalism is increased because they see the other side that is actively mocking them and making fun of them. And it makes it more difficult to cross the aisle and have a different view, because why would you agree with someone that's actively basically denigrating you? I think that's a very well said point. I do want to say one of the lessons I've learned in the last 3 years running for public office is, even though I personally agree with that statement, and if you look at the way I try to represent myself online, I don't spend a lot of time directly attacking, Republicans as a whole. I also don't spend a lot of time trying to tell people how they should express themselves or how they should act. I feel like at the core of a lot of this, particularly on the side I'm a part of, there's a raw anger. And I think personally kind of telling people how to harness that anger and saying, well, let's just do this in a respectable way. It's just something for me personally. It just doesn't, it doesn't feel right, you know? Especially, I mean, Frank and I are relatively comfortable, right? Like we have a house, we've got cars, you know, we know we're going to eat every day with no problem. We've got healthcare. Relatively speaking, Frank and I have it pretty good. So I feel, I personally feel like it's not my role to tell people how their activism should be. Frank, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Though of course we did tell them that Facebooking and tweeting is
That's
not.
fair. Yes, very fair.
So if you guys want to Facebook and tweet, go ahead. We're not going to stop you, but we would encourage you to perhaps think about other ways to get
Other
involved.
outlets for that passion. Yes.
Yeah, especially running for local office, because so many things happen at a local level, and that's where the Republican bench comes from. They start at the local offices. They learn how to do politics, and they just move up.
Yep.
And unfortunately, some of them get elected president.
All right, awesome. Well, that's just about our time here today. I wanted to thank everyone for coming. Frank, do you have a final word to say? And then I will go.
No, I just want to say thank you to everyone who supported us in all sorts of different ways, not just financially, but also just encouraging us, or having meaty conversations, and we you can't run for office without support, and we appreciate all those who have supported us.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say I'm not going anywhere. If you read my statement of when I dropped out of the race, it was a Medium post called "How Would I Feel If Someone Working for Me Died from Coronavirus?" And I was talking very honestly about how I didn't ethically feel like I could send my team out to do the work that has to be done to win a congressional campaign. That doesn't mean that I'm not interested in running for office. It certainly doesn't mean that my career here is done. I'm only 42, so I will be back. I would say our country is in a very, very serious place. And I think it's up to all of us to do our parts. And my challenge to everyone out there listening to this right now is pick one of three things to do to help save your country. I want you to do one of three things. You can either run for office yourself, you can either volunteer for someone who's running for office, or you can donate money to someone who's running for office. It's not enough to just vote anymore. We've all got to get engaged in any way we can. And I think that's the most pragmatic way we can make this better. So thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate it.